All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Can you just check? We have a number of people on Zoom. Can you check that they can hear everything okay? Okay, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome our guest today, Dr. Yvette Roke and Jamie Hoefakker here to the EPFL. So I was introduced initially to the work brought to my attention by Sylvie, and in the context of the work that we're doing here in terms of increasing awareness, educating the community about mental health and the importance of mental health, we had a call, and I was really fascinated by the work that they're doing. When we talk about mental health, it's a very complex term, and for many people, it's very difficult to break down. It's usually either a positive or a negative connotation, and sometimes we feel a bit helpless in terms of how do we manage mental health. And we discussed the concept that mental health is rather a spectrum, and spectrum where we're constantly going through the day from one part to another. What we usually lack is the proper knowledge on how to navigate that spectrum and how to know where we are in that spectrum and the tools to help us manage those challenges and switch back and forth. And it's very rare that we have with us here a psychiatrist and a psychologist who can actually an expert in the field. And what's really unique about their work is as you will hear, we will have a lecture about mental health. They work also with people who have autism spectrum disorder. And in the context of their work, they've tried to develop tools that help people sort of self-manage their stress and tools to support mental health. Some of it I heard has been experimented and the first data are out. So we'll have the lecture, we'll have a demonstration of the app. And I'm very happy when we talked, we had discussed the idea whether it's possible to extend some of these approaches to students and to people in universities. And I'm happy to do that. They already have the first data now. So thank you very much for coming, and really looking forward to the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ilo. We do our best. And we'll have a start. So I'm Yvette Roke, I'm a psychiatrist at GGz Centraal, which is a large mental health institute in the Netherlands. And I will be presenting with my colleague Jamie Hoefakker. We both work on the autism department at GGz Centraal. First, I would like to tell you something about mental health. Then I will explain something about stress in the ordinary. And I will jump to autism spectrum disorder. And then Jamie will take over and he will tell you and demonstrate to you about the SAM app and the Step at Work app, the app we developed for our own employers and students at GGz Centraal. Well, mental health. Mental health is not something to be ashamed of. Mental health is something to look after. Mental health is very, very important and is constantly changing. So I think a lot of mental health problems are because we don't discuss our mental health with others, and we expect it to be a bit of a rigid thing, but it's, like Ilo said, something that can change and shift over time, and you need to look at your own patterns to understand your own mental health. So mental health is a state of mental well-being. It enables people to cope with the stress of daily life. And mental health affects how we think, how we act, and how we feel. Mental health causes a lot of problems, a lot of sickness from work, a lot of potential labor or study, which is terminated, and it leads to a higher rate of unemployment. Mental health is a global crisis. 25% of worldwide people suffer from mental health problems. And a lot of these problems occur before the age of 25. 3/4 of these problems are before the age of 25. And mental health problems often lead to mental illness, such as depression, anxiety, or psychosis. Because if the stress keeps on piling up, eventually people get an anxiety disorder or depression or psychosis. But it's not just as simple. I put in a picture of a heart. So a cardiologist fixes the heart. There's a problem in the heart, an obstruction, he operates, and then the heart functions again. It's a bit simple, but just that's like how it is. A neurologist looks at the brain. There's a tumor or hemorrhage, and then fix this problem. But for us with mental health, the problem is, of course, inside the brain, but it's a problem in interaction with our environment. So we cannot pinpoint the cause of mental health problem to a specific region in the brain, or a specific gene, or a specific something that is missing or lacking or not functioning, because it's constantly changing. So we need to change the way we think about mental health. And we need to take in account the surroundings, the environment of the people, where they're living, what they're experiencing. So for us, as a psychiatrist and a psychologist, we need to change the way we work, because people come to us in our rooms. They sit with us for 1 hour every 2 weeks, every week. They tell us about their problems, and we try to help them, coach them, teach them new strategies. But if you do this in a room every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every week, it will not give changes in the environment. So we have to think about how we broaden our help into the environment of the people that are seeking help. I learned from Sylvie, my sister, who's sitting there. I talked about the presentation I was giving, and she said, you need to put in more facts, because the students here are hungry for facts and figures. But in the Netherlands, or in the mental health field, we're not used to this. So I tried to listen to her and put in some facts and figures. So I went to data.health.org, and there you can find some interesting facts and figures. For example, this slide, it says something about the disease burden for mental and neurodevelopmental disorders in 2019. And as you can see, Switzerland and the Netherlands are blue. And this says something about 2000 to 2050 years lost for every 100,000 people caused by mental health problems. So they accounted for how many years of lives are lost for people when they're experiencing mental health problems. So this is a very big amount of years lost. Then in the next graphic, you can see the number of people with mental health disorders in the Netherlands and Switzerland. And for the Netherlands, it's like 2.7, 2.8 million people. Of every 17.5 million people suffer from mental health problems. And for Switzerland, it's like 1.45 million. And I thought Switzerland was 8.7 million people who live in Switzerland. So it's 1 in every 6 people in the Netherlands and in Switzerland who suffer from a mental health disorder. So that is a very big number. As you can see, the share of total disease burden is about 9%, 8% for Switzerland and the Netherlands. So a large account of this burden from the total of the country is due to diseases of mental health. So this is just stressing the importance to do something about the mental health problem. Now I want to make a jump to you, or to the people here, the students, of course. Students are at higher risk of developing mental health problems because they're more vulnerable. They're more vulnerable because their age is below 25, mostly, and they're often away from home for the first time, and they lack a support system, or they have to build a new support system. And a support system is a very big strength to save you from mental health problems. And another risk factor for students is that the becoming of a student is a very stressful experience, because you have a lot of pressure on you to perform every day, to do new things. So all these things together make a student very vulnerable for having a mental health, or gaining a mental health problem. In Switzerland in 2020, I think at the University of Lausanne, there was a survey conducted among first-year students, and this was the How Are You survey, the well-being survey at the University of Lausanne. And they questioned all the first-year students about their mental health. And over 50% of the students reported a lot of stress due to the workload they experienced. And just under 50% of the students experienced anxiety and depression. And there was a jump of 50% in the sleep consultations. So I don't know how it's like at the APFL, but you can see the same. It's the same in the Netherlands also. But there's a big problem among students, and of course I think about also among the staff of the universities regarding mental health. And so in the total of Switzerland, there are 200,000 university students. That's a big number. Then I will make a jump to the neurobiology of stress. Stress and its concepts have been revised for, so long I can remember. It's always changing. And if I talk about stress, I mean the concept of stress, the stressor, and the stress response. And the brain processes stress through two major pathways: a direct pathway and a more indirect chronic pathway, a pathway which takes longer. And the pathway for the direct stress is SAM. And that's it's a bit of a joke, because the SAM app, the stress autism app you made, also hates SAM. But the system is SAM, it's a sympathetic adrenal medullary axis. And this is the system which tells you to come in action directly. Well, it doesn't tell you, it just happens. It's the adrenaline that comes. It's the heartbeat that goes faster. It's the blood flow that keeps flowing, pumping. And the glucose, the energy that sets loose. And this is the situation where you're being scared by, I don't know, you're held on gunshots, or a truck will appear at the rotary and he's confronting you. This is acute stress situations set on the SAM system. And this is the SAM system. It's the spinal cord which gives a signal to the kidney. The kidney will release adrenaline and noradrenaline, and the brainstem reacts. So it's not through, it doesn't come through really to the brain. It's just the brainstem goes a reflex and sets the body off from stress. The recovery time of this system doesn't take that long. So your heart, if the stress is over, your heart will be going slower again, blood pressure will be slower, and your body will recover. The other system, and I'll try to pronounce it, the hypothalamus pituitary axis, but I refer to it as HPA. It's much more easy for me. That's the other system, but it's a slower reaction. It's a hormonal reaction. So this is the stress reaction, the stress system. For example, if you lose a friend, or you get unemployed, or you have a financial crisis. So this is the slower reaction of the brain system to stress. And this system will take a lot longer to recover. So this is another schematic sign of this HPA system. It's the brain hypothalamic region that's involved in this stress reaction. And in the hypothalamic region also is the circadian rhythm, the sleep rhythm, and the place where we feel warm and cold, we feel pain, and we feel the need to eat and drink. So all these things are connected. And if you are under a lot of stress, you know that the circadian rhythm also is being influenced. You don't feel pain, you don't eat. So this brain region is in charge of stress. And it will release cortisol releasing hormone to the anterior pituitary. We call it in Dutch the hypophyse, which is much easier to pronounce. And then the kidney will get a sign, and cortisol is being secreted. The cortisol is the stress hormone. And if the cortisol secretion takes a long time, before it will be set on because the stress is maintained, then you can get two states: the cortisol overshoot, and then we see as a psychiatrist and a psychologist the agitated depression state, in which patients are very irritable, don't get at ease, don't sleep, or the cortisol is being low, it stays low, and then you see melancholic depression, where patients just sleep, don't eat, or just eat too much, and don't care anymore. So these are the two ways in which chronic stress and chronic cortisol disbalance leads to mental disorder. The consequences of these two stress systems is that the body will mobilize energy. So if you are in a stressful situation, you need a lot of energy because you need to act upon this stress because the body thinks it's going to die. You have metabolic changes and also activation of your immune system. So I told about cortisol just before. The immune system will be activated, and this will lead to, in some cases with chronic stress, it can lead to autoimmune disorders or easily being sick all the time from viruses. So in autism, it's a state of chronic stress mostly, we see a lot of autoimmune disorders. And also there will be suppression of the digestive and the reproductive systems. If you're under a lot of stress, the body won't think about making babies, for example. They save the energy and you won't get pregnant. So in women, hormonal disbalance can lead to infertility or minor fertility problems. In the brain, stress causes alteration in cellular excitability and synaptic and neuroplasticity. And the goal of these brain alterations are to survive. So this is the main message I want to give. Stress, the stress systems are all about our survival. If you read and interpret the signals wrongly, you stay in a state in which you are in overdrive, and then this will lead, this food system will lead to mental health problems. But it's not just all about stress is bad. Stress is also a good thing, because if you don't have stress, you can't perform. You can't exercise, you can't do job interviews well. If I didn't have stress, I couldn't come up to give you this lecture today. But I need to build in, after this lecture, recovery time. Because if you don't recover, then you will slide into the orange and the red. And that will mean you're at risk for developing a burnout, exhaustion, depression, and that kind of things. So in our field, we're not about stress is a bad thing, but we're about knowing your stress and building in enough recovery time to get in the green again. Because if you don't get in the green, then you will stay in the red and then you're at risk. People who are vulnerable for this kind of stress are people with autism spectrum disorder. And of course, I'm in the field of working with people with autism for about 20 years. So this is where my passion lies, and these are the people I want to help. Because I want to make a little bridge to autism spectrum disorder and why they are more at risk for developing stress problems. 1% of the population is diagnosed with ASD. It's worldwide the same. So I'm going to do the math so quickly. I think you can do it better, but in Switzerland there are like under a million people. Yeah, just under a million people with ASD. And ASD is characterized by social communication and interaction problems, such as problems in reciprocity, problems in not understanding about non-verbal communication, and problems in maintaining social relationships. Autism is not about people with autism don't want to make contact. They do want to make contact, but the sensory input is so great in the brain that they're not able to make this social contact. So this is a big misunderstanding about people with autism, that they just don't want friendships or don't want love. Yes, they want to, but they're not able to because they have such a lot of sensory input that enables them to maintain these relationships. Also, another thing what's happening with autism spectrum disorder is that there is restrictive repetitive behaviors. You need to have a lot of categories between these two to have together the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And in the restrictive repetitive behaviors, it's the inflexibility. So if you have a plan, you stick to the plan, and they get confused if you want to change the plan. It's the repetitive behavior, and that's people with autism do this to feel at ease again, because they're anxious about things that are changing or all the sensory input from the environment. And if you make a repetitive behavior, then you ease yourself. So this is a good thing for people with autism. Also, they can have fixations on certain things. It can be everything. It can be dinosaurs. It can be trains. It can be the world state. It literally anything. And they have a problem with the sensory input in the brain. So all the senses are sharper, and their hearing is much better. Before the sound you hear now, for people with autism, this causes a lot of energy to leak away because they constantly have to filter out this noise. And for the people without autism, the neurotypical people, this happens automatically. So you can understand that people with autism, they perform, yeah, you call it in Dutch topsport, the athletic performance just to get through normal life. It's for them a lot harder than for us. They have a different brain. From the day of the conception, the brain development is different in people with autism than in the neurotypical people. And this is not something you can see under the microscope, in the MRI or whatever. It's the architecture of the brain that is different. So they have an overgrowth of neurons until the age of 4, and also a bigger head because they have a lot of more neurons. And these neurons are connected with each other much higher and much more than in people without autism. And you call it higher connectivity. And this higher connectivity leads to the sandy paths. You can see people, the neurotypical people, have information highways. So we understand information because it's in the information highway. People with autism get the same information, but they cannot take the highway. They have to take the sandy roads. So this means that it takes a lot longer to process information. What it also means is that people with autism are much, much better in details, much better. So it has also advantages to have a brain which takes the sandy roads. They're also often more creative because they associate their thoughts and they don't come out from A to B, but they also see C and D and E and F. So it's a different brain. The lack of pruning is the cause of this high connectivity because in neurotypical people, the brain cells that are too much or the connectivity that's too much, it will be cut away. We call it pruning. Then at the neurotransmitter level, the dopamine, that's the reward signal stuff in the brain, there is a lack of dopamine in the frontal lobe of the brain with people with autism. And this means that they have much more difficulty at attention stuff and keeping concentrated on things, and they're very easily distracted. And if they don't have autism, we call it HDHD or HDD. The hyperactivity is in the brain. So a busy brain, highly distracted, and 60% of people with autism have this kind of HDHD, and medication will help really good for this problem if you want to take it. And it's the only medication as a psychiatrist where I say, yes, maybe it's a plan to try if you like. You can put it in your toolbox to help you in certain situations. And all the other medication, well, you gain weight and you have sexual problems, and it doesn't do anything about the autism spectrum disorder. If you don't have to take it, rather not. But sometimes if people want to and it helps, it's okay, of course. Then in another part of the brain, the temporal lobe, the dopamine is higher. And in this part of the brain, the sensory input will arrive. And if the dopamine is higher there, it means you will hear sound much more. So a client with autism will hear sound 3 buildings away. So all this sound, well, and you can't filter it, it's really difficult. The same with light, the same with touch, the same with taste. So this makes the life of people with autism challenging. If you have more dopamine than the autistic level, then you call it a psychosis. So this is a spectrum. Because a psychosis is that the brain tells you can hear, see, and feel stuff that isn't there. But it's about having more dopamine in this region that makes you think that your senses feel or hear something. Well, I'm getting really caught up in this because I'm full of fire about the autism spectrum disorder. I will go to the next slide, and then I will make you understand that people with autism have a lot of more stress than the neurotypical people. Because if you see everything in detail, if you are easily distracted, if you have sharper senses, if you have reduced attention and concentration, and if you have overview difficulty, all these things together make the world a totally not understandable place. So the body of people with autism and the brain often feels like there is a crisis situation, that there's stress. So the brain is stressed out all the time. And people with autism need to build in a lot of more recovery time every day to keep the stress low. And this is really important because if the stress is low, then there won't be any problems about anxiety or depression, psychosis. So this is why we thought about how we can help people with autism better, but every people. We have to manage stress in daily life. And then we make ourselves abundant. We can stop working and everybody, nobody needs a psychiatrist or a psychologist, maybe. I will just tell you one more thing and then I will give the word to my colleague Jamie. That's about my personal story as a psychiatrist, because I told you about, it's not about being in your room and helping people. I had a young patient who was 21, he was called Arnoud, and he was 18 when he came to me, and then already knew that he couldn't live with the autism, his brain, the difficulty in not being able to connect with people, with wanting to connect, all the sensory inputs in the brain. So we tried to help him with all the therapy we could think of, all the medication we could think of, but it wasn't enough. So he took his life when he was 21. And it hit me really hard. And then I thought, if I want to keep being a psychiatrist, I have to change the way I work, because I don't feel I can help people enough with the real problems in daily life. So then I talked about this with 15 of my other clients, and they agreed with me that this is a big problem, and we started a collaboration. And in co-creation, we made it possible to have self-management tools. And this is the point where I will give the talk to Jamie, and he will tell you all about our SAM app and how this is being done.
So, as Yvette said before, recovery time and self-insight are essential for everyone, and especially people with autism spectrum disorder, because they're mainly high stress levels, but generally high stress levels. So we created a mobile application, a mobile solution to deal with their stress problems daily, to be able to signal their stress problems in real time during the day. So what it does is that it supports individuals with their stress management and how they recognize their stress throughout the day. So it asks you questions about your stress levels through a questionnaire. And it does that 4 times a day with an interval of 4 hours as well. So it's easy to remember. And it asks you what you've done throughout the day for the past 4 hours. It's a method called ESM. So it's a method that makes sure that you, it asks you questions about your emotional states through intervals. So we assume as psychologists and psychiatrists that if you ask someone in the consultation room after 2 weeks how their week has been for the past 2 weeks, that they usually say either bad or good, because they give you the answer from the emotional state that they're in at that moment instead of how the actual past 2 weeks have been. And so the ups and downs throughout the 2 weeks are hard to remember. So the algorithm that we created, that we set up, generates a report throughout the answers that you've given on the questionnaire about your perceived stress level. And then you can also tell the app if you thought that was actually correct or not. And it also gives you personal advice, stress reducing advice, just a few general tips which you can select. And you can also see all the feedback in the charts later in the app, but I'm of course going to show you guys. I'm about 99% sure that if I try to click this video, it will not work. which it won't, which is fine because this video is actually narrated in Dutch with my own voice, which is terrible to hear. So I'm just gonna tell you guys myself how the app works. I expected that. I said I'm coming, I was sitting on the chair and I thought, no, I downloaded the presentation, it won't work. Because it's normally online. So what the app does, it's all in Dutch, so I'm gonna have to try and translate everything live right now. As I said, the app will generate questionnaires for you, and it will set it up at specific times throughout the day. And it does that according to your own preference. So you can set up 2, 3, or 4 questionnaires per day. Once it sets up a questionnaire for you, you get a notification. You can either fill in the questionnaire, or you can ignore the notification, as I do often with the first one. And then after half an hour, you get a reminder notification. You can either click that one or ignore it again. And you have 1 hour in total to fill in the questionnaire. Then after 1 hour, it will disappear. It's fine. You can fill in the next questionnaire. And you can either do that 2, 3, or 4 times a day. Within the questionnaire, the app asks you about what you've done for the past 4 hours, which I'm going to show you as well, and asks you 7 stress-related questions that we validated with our scientific research to relate to the constructs of stress. It asks you questions like, did you have a lot on your mind? And I'm also going to try and translate those for you real time, and you have to bear with me because real-time translation Dutch to English. With the answers that you've given on the questionnaire, it calculates your stress level and it gives that back to you right away. And it also gives you the personalized stress advice, stress coping skills tips. So currently we have about 30.
Are the type of questions the same, or it's dynamic in a sense that depending on your state at a given time, the nature of questions you will get later?
No, they're actually static, which makes it easier to fill in the next time. So at first, people take about 3 minutes to fill in the question. I would show in short, but after a while, it's just 1 minute. It's more about signaling your stress in the moment, and these 7 stress-related questions are necessary to actually relate to that one. They correlate to the construct stress very well. So dynamic questions and some questions that correlate less. So these are the ones that correlate. Good question though. So we have about 30 users every 30 minutes, so that's about 1 user per minute. And we have about 2,200 users per day, which I think is very weird because then that 1 user per minute would constitute to about 1,440 users per day. But the graphs say that we have about 2,200 users per day.
More than a minute. They stay more than a minute.
They could stay more than a minute, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm expecting them to stay more than a minute,
Yeah.
so that makes sense. Thank you. We have over 10,000 downloads right now within the Netherlands and Belgium combined, because it's still in Dutch. Not other languages.
So we're planning in 2023 to be English
as well, yeah, and Ukrainian, French, yeah, and German. So we're gradually seeing a rise of numbers. We started out with about 100 users on the first day that it came out. That were just users that were generally interested, and then it rose to about 200 users per day right now. We also have a very enthusiastic SAM panel of about 300 participants, which is behind that work, 300 plus participants that help us by improving that. We also adhere to the GDPR, so that's the data protection regulations, both European and non-European, except the United States, but the regulations are strange. Because then we have to store our data there, and that's just illegal. And it's also Orca certified, which is an international organization. So long story short, you might be thinking, sounds like a nice app, and it's nice that you did that with your clients, you made it for your clients, by your clients. Great that you've done all this, but how are you going to show me in about 10 to 15 minutes now how to design with clients participation and inclusive design for neurodiverse audiences? I'm not I'm not even going to try. What I am going to try is show you guys by the example of the stress autism how we use client participation and inclusive design in our innovation process. So we believe that client participation is essential to actually creating a successful and well implementable solution, especially in mental health care, because a neurodiverse patient is much better actually knowing what they need in which situations, what they're missing in their daily life or in a treatment setting than us, because we're just going to design for ourselves and we're going to use it instead of the target audience. Sorry. And what we also think is important is that you make use of existing innovations, so something that already exists that might be lacking something, might need something extra in order for it to be used by your actual target audience, and in this case, the patients, the person with autism spectrum disorder. So a good example is that in Holland, in the Netherlands, the stress signaling plan is a very popular treatment tool. And the stress signaling plan is to help patients increase their awareness of their stress signaling, their stress levels. And it's kind of like a traffic light. So the color red, for example, would correspond to high stress levels and stress indicators like heart palpitations, like I'm having a panic. And the color green would correspond to lower stress levels and positive thoughts. So the question is, if this is such a popular construct, such a popular treatment tool that we use in our daily treatment and consultation rooms all of the time, why is it not being implemented by the patient as successfully? Because believe me, when they come back into my consultation room after 2 weeks and ask them, where's the piece of paper that I gave you with your stress signaling plan? They say, at home, somewhere, I lost it, it's in my bag, didn't really use it, gonna have it again. So that was also one of the first problems that we noticed. So the population that we interviewed, the people with autism spectrum disorder, actually mentioned this the first, that the piece of paper that they were given was often unused or lost. So they did want something that was readily available to them at all times, but that was better and that they would not lose as opposed to a piece of paper.
And we'll remind them.
We will remind them as well, instead of just being there. And secondly, it also wasn't brought up in the moment. So as I've said before, we only asked them about their stress levels after 2 weeks in the consultation instead of doing it in the moment because they're not there, not there in their phone, for example. So that's something that we thought of immediately. A mobile phone is something that you have readily available. It's usually on you, and it's able to actually remind you about something. So what we did is that we partnered after a lot of piloting and user testing, reviewing and adjusting, and some more user testing. We partnered with a software developer, Eagle Science Software in the Netherlands, and they developed the app for us. So they changed it from a pilot to a market-ready product. And of course, we encountered difficulties, there are some challenges. So we had to adhere to the digital information regulations, which are tough enough on its own. But we also have to have assessed as a non-medical tool. So stress as a construct is not a medical, stress as a concept is not a medical construct. And the questions that we asked about the stress from it as well, but we wanted to treat it as a medical construct because we do have patients filling in the questionnaires. So we wanted to assess it as a non-medical tool, but then we protect the data as being medical data, which we and finally, we also had to make sure that the software developer and the UX designers working at the software developer didn't make the app nice and sleek and modern, because they try to do that all the time. They try to make it as snazzy as possible, but we had to stay as close as possible to the ones who need actual target group, because people with autism spectrum disorder for function of performance. All people usually, but UX designers really like some snazzy, sleek products. So I'm gonna give you guys a demo. If it works. over ASD.SAM. So if you get a notification, as is up here, as you can see here, it says in Dutch, you can, would you think about try to fill in the questionnaire of the day now? Well, if I clicked it, it would open the app, it would ask me to log in with the login code. It's a five-digit number. And then you can either fill in the questionnaire by clicking on the button, or it will open automatically the notification. Well, if I click this, questionnaire will open and it would ask me what I've been doing for the past 4 hours. That's what it says on top, and I have to click at least one, a minimum of 1 to a maximum of 5 activities. So I had some social contact with my colleagues actually this morning in the hotel. I was traveling, it was very short to walk from the hotel. And I gave a presentation right now. And then I click next. And then I can select how I felt about doing those activities. So first, the social contact with my colleagues, which was, well, not long. Good. We traveled. Also good, but a bit neutral. I'd say neutral. We were running a bit late, and then we start the presentation, and you know how it goes to travel for a presentation. And then I had to actually give the presentation. I can ask you guys how's it going? Good. I'll say good. Thank you. So then it will ask me if I want to actually comment something about the past 4 hours. So for example, if I was giving this presentation and it went well, at the end of the presentation, somebody yelled at me, I'd probably feel a bit bad about the presentation. It would influence my stress levels, but usually I'm not that nervous about giving presentations. It's kind of nice. Still. So I could comment something about this presentation, and then later on I could find that and feedback in that, or I could say no. In this case, I'll say no. Then I will ask you about 2 things: about positive thoughts and about your energy level. Because we believe in positive reinforcement. The app will sometimes tell you 3 times in a row that you're experiencing stress, but then at least we'll also give you some positive reinforcement as well. So for the past 4 hours, I've mostly had positive thoughts. Agreed. I haven't been awake for 4 hours. So, and for the past 4 hours, I felt energetic. Definitely. And then we'll start asking about the 7 stress-related indicators. So we'll give you 7 stress-related questions. And the first question is, did you have a lot in your mind? Were you worrying? And you always have to answer those questions in relation to yourself. So how you're feeling. So personally, I'm someone my boyfriend would know. I usually worry a lot, all day, every day about what I'm going to do somewhere. I think that knows well. And I would never say no. I think I would usually say yes, but not more than normal. Or I could say yes, more than normal, or yes, a lot more than normal. So in this case, I'd say yes, but not more than normal. Because for me, it doesn't really correlate to my stress level. Stress levels that much. And the second question is about have you taken care of yourself? So ask, have you taken less good care of yourself? Have you eaten? Have you been drinking? Have you relaxed? And again, according to your own self, youth and feeling. So we had a good breakfast, had a good rest. We were relaxed in the morning. So I'd say, no, I haven't done that less well. Then we'll ask you about any physical complaints or stress in your body. And I'd still say, no, I'm fine. They will ask you about making decisions, and if you delayed making decisions, and no. It will ask you if there were a lot of stimuli coming your way. So, well, semi, but not more than normal, I'd say. And it will ask you if you're agitated in the past 4 hours. And it will ask you if you were tired. Again, no. You can save, and give you a live feedback of your stress levels. But it says it's green, But I could say in the next question where it asks you, do you agree with the fact that we say that you experience little amounts of stress? I could say, yes, I did not have stress. No, I had a little bit of stress, or no, I had a lot of stress. If I click no, I had a little bit of stress, it will give me a decision moment between stress in the workplace or stress at home. So using the separate work app. And if I click yes, I did not have stress, it will come good. Nice for you. You still want to see a stress reducing tip, maybe, but they don't. We don't necessarily make you do that. Make the choice. So in this case, I'd say no, I had a little bit of stress. It will ask me. There were no clear signs of you having stress, but it still seemed like you did have stress. What's causing this? I could say I had to fly in from the Netherlands yesterday. And then later on, I can read that back in my feedback as well. And then it will give me a decision moment between what type of stress reducing tip I want to receive. So for the workplace or at home, I guess this would be the workplace, yes. Sort of. And then it will say something like, we feel bad that you had a little bit of stress, but you did feel energetic and you had a positive mindset. Try the following stress reducing tip. Talk about it with a colleague, or probably will do that. Then you can either close the questionnaire then, or you can click on show all stress tips. Then you can see all the tips that you've selected for yourself. And if you click show all tips on the bottom, you can see all the stress tips, all the standard tips that are put into the app from the start. You can also try and change all the settings in the app. So, for example, the list of activities that was asked to you, you can change that and personalize it. So, for example,
will it keep track of your preferences?
It also keeps track of
you usually use the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does that. So, for example, if on the top it says social contact with colleagues, I do that quite a lot throughout the day. I would select it a lot, and then it would appear on the bottom, on the top of the list. Yeah, exactly. And so this is the standard list of activities. You can deselect and select several activities that are put into the app automatically, and you can also personalize the activities. Those ones you can input yourself into the app. So, for example, something I do that doesn't do is I give. I hold interviews with patients, structured interviews, and I could technically input that into the app, and then select it later on when I had a questionnaire. So the last stress measurement is shown on the front page, on your home page. It's the today page, that's what it says at the top, today. And it also shows the latest tip that it gave to you. So it does that below the stress measurement. It has a diary, so you can input some information throughout the day. I sometimes do my documents when I'm also filling in a questionnaire. And in the insight page, so it's statistics, you can view your last stress measurements throughout the day. So you can see summaries here about what it says about your stress level, your positive mindset, what I was doing, how I felt about that. And you can do that on a daily level or on a weekly level. And then it also gives you summaries about your patterns. So on the stress level, you can say moments where I had a lot of stress this week, which thankfully it says none. And moments where I had little to no stress this week. It will give you a summary throughout the week. And you can also see which activities make you feel good on the top and which activities make you feel bad. You don't like planning?
No.
No.
Use my inbox.
I'm using Yvette's account.
My data.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of stress because I had to prepare for here. Go here, so we ordered just about.
Well, now we.
That's a beautiful English.
Let's see. You send us your next evaluation of the full app.
Yeah, exactly. You should see if it's still good. You can do a lot of personalization in the app, so you can set up how many questionnaires, you can set up the tips as well, just like I showed you before with the activities, so tips for at work, tips for at home. You can set up, you saw the emoticons during the questionnaire, that's how you were feeling about the activities. You can also do it without emoticons, and you can also change the use of colors. So for people with autism spectrum disorder, the traffic light colors are actually quite stressful.
Also for our employees.
And also for our
Yeah.
employees as well.
Not that different. It's the difference between autism and the person is not that.
Not at all.
Different, so.
So then it changes the colors to blue patterns.
Does it only give tips or there is something much different?
No, it gives you stress reducing tips that we selected with our scientific research with the different first the patient with autism spectrum disorder. Then when we also made an app with our own employees, we collected different tips as well, but they were usually the same, they were very similar. But they're very static, yes. And they just switch.
What I mean is just, for example, let's say that the app recognized the fact that I had prolonged stress, very on this side of burnout. Does it give me contact with I don't know, specialists, chats?
It does something.
suicide lines?
Yeah, it does something similar. It's a good question though. So when you've experienced a lot of stress, for example, 3 times in a row, it will give you that feedback. So it will give you feedback like, it seems like you've been experiencing a lot of stress. We would recommend you to, for example, talk to someone near to you or write it down and then later on try to figure out what's giving you so much stress. But it doesn't necessarily connect you with specialists right away. No.
Quite powerful for the workplace, right? Because when we deal with mental health and with stress and things, it's sort of you tend to individualize, and therefore instead of addressing the cultural and systematic factor, we sort of blame the people who have it, right?
Mhm.
What can we do with you? I mean, it's positive, but you're actually putting the spotlight on. So I mean, I could imagine, if you have this in a university, you can measure the stress throughout the campus. I mean, if you have this feed in.
But the data that's the big plus is that the data is for the ones feeding in themselves. So you can only look at all the big data, big summary, not the individual data.
Yeah, but if you have it in, well, it's very difficult to be anonymized. You do it and you will know which classroom you will get. But I mean, if you.
It's just about we don't collect data about these kinds of
Location.
things.
No, we
So-
don't.
But the idea is that if you want to introduce new measures to reduce stress, to improve the wellness in the workplace, it's always very difficult to measure.
It is
So if
very.
you have such an app, an anonymized way, and then you have different people are using it, then you can aggregate this data in a way you cannot track it back.
Yeah.
Then you have really a way of, I'm not sure how many people are ready to look at it, because you get the data, it's what you do with it, then it forces you.
Yeah, we think so.
But
as
I
well.
think it's a big problem you have because, in the university and many working places, when you do surveys, it's done every 4 years. It's the same as you said, you see your patient in 2 months, you don't know what happens in between, if you introduce more counselors, if you know what kind of impact.
But I think it's good about this, that we want to survey.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like if PPFL wants to know about your mental health. No, it's yourself who wants to know. No, but if your boss wants to know about your mental health. Yeah, that doesn't work. Then the whole survey doesn't, right? It's the
It's self-management.
It's a self-management aspect, and we have 80% of people who have used the app that say their stress is down, they recognize their stress, they recognize their patterns, and they're much more happier after using the app. So it's
But it's also,
80%.
I mean, you mentioned earlier the need for recovery time. Which is crucial.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in a busy daily life, it's hard for you to realize where you are along that spectrum.
Yeah.
And to have something that reminds you. So it's like, the measuring glucose for diabetes.
Yeah,
So you
usually
can
if you-
ignore,
It's
and
just
then you
a
read your
check-in.
meter and say, okay, now I have to.
if you have 16 meetings in a row, then usually you only notice how stressed you are at the end of the 16 meetings. We've probably all noticed during the past few years. And that's exactly what it does. It also tells me, because usually I run a bit fast with Yvette as well. And then I don't really notice myself how stressed I am. And then the app tells me in a very generic way, like, you are stressed. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll take a walk. Fine. And then I go on to my next meeting, instead of just continuing walking on and then getting too stressed. And then at the end of the day, I sit by my computer and I'm like, I'm too stressed.
Maybe we open the relative.
Ik ben nog with the time we are finished. This was the last slide.
So maybe then we take
Yeah.
questions.
Yes. Thanks for the one. A question about the questionnaire and tracking stress, because I feel in the questionnaire maybe we might not be truthful with the answers sometimes, or we don't know how to judge really our stress ourselves. And for example, smartwatch, they have some stress tracking. So I'm wondering how, like, should you trust also the stress that is measured by our watch, and can it be linked to let's say this app and see if it's really, if you perceive your stress the way your body perceives stress? It's a really good question. We did a study with the SAM app and Fitbit to measure stress, but it didn't work this well because the Fitbit measures acute moments of stress, and it's really disputable if it really measures stress, because there is not a device that can measure stress. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Can you trust? No, I don't think so. Only if you use it for a very long time and you know yourself about the indicators, then you can trust. But it's just about the acute moments. It's much more better, we think, to look at the chronic patterns of stress. So if you just do this by asking 2 simple questions and looking back for literature, it's known 4 hours, every 4 hours, 4 times a day. That's the best way to measure a pattern. So this is what the app does.
That gives you a state of mind and body. It's not
And you're
just a
referring to
physical
yourself, your average self. This is a big thing. You have to look at this, your average self. So you have to know yourself a little bit. I guess it takes some time. You have to use the app for quite some time before you really know how to answer. It really goes fast because people with autism have a big problem with knowing themselves. So we were very curious how this would go, but it went very well. And we try to explain average. So we have an E icon on every page, and also the word average we explain because we talk to them about, is this a good word? Because average is such a difficult term. But there is not a better word. So, and it works for people with autism, but also for the people at GGz Centraal who use that. And the Fitbit data, yeah, well, I don't think that's, I think we will make steps with these kinds of devices. But at the moment, there's no device that can measure this. It's only measuring your heart rate. But I've been or conductance of sweat, maybe. Yeah, I've been looking into this a little bit from the point of view of how it measures it, right? So it measures light filtering through your skin, and then it gives a very noisy curve, right? You know, how your watch is positioned to the arm and stuff like this. And it has very vague machine learning algorithms that are used for the entire world population, and it's, I mean, it's really not.
Well, I think these things will improve. The better devices that you will.
I think in 10 years maybe. And I still think that chronic the patterns are the way to change, because it's the little things you notice you can change. And if you can change one little thing, it will give you a reinforcement that you can change all the little things. And from therefore you can really make a big change. Instead of thinking, well, if I measure this acute moment and I fix it, then everything goes away. It's not just like that.
I was curious to hear about the adoption rate of this among your crowd of people, clients, or patients, whatever. So what's the fraction of that population that actually say, oh yeah, I'm going to give it a try?
There's such a hunger for Summit, I think.
It differs per population. So if you look at the SAM app, which is for people with autism spectrum disorder, then we have the scientific research group, the adoption rate in that one was 100%. Nobody stopped using it even after the scientific research. They kept on using it. And probably if I asked them now, they were still using it, which is 3 years ago since we stopped. And we also made an app based on the SAM stress autism aid, which I just showed you, the Step at Work app, which is for employees working within mental health care and just any regular employee, really. And we did a study with 60 employees as well. I think about 10% stopped during the scientific study, and then we haven't actually live introduced it to our own company yet. But most of the employees found it in the App Store, and that they just started using it themselves.
Still they're using it without we implemented it. So.
And I think those levels would differ across people experiencing high levels of stress. That would probably be more inclined to actually use this app instead of people who aren't motivated to use the app.
And you can tell something a bit more about adoption of the compliance is for medical devices. I think it's about 3%. That if you introduce an app for medical purpose, people are very enthusiastic the first day, the second day, and in a week it's 3% who uses it. And with our app, it's around 10%. So that's still 90% quit after time. 10% is a lot of improvements from 3%.
And personally, we also believe that even if they stop, it doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't get anything from using the app. Because what we saw in our scientific research is that also people who continued using the app that said, well, I kind of don't want to, but I'm gonna because of the scientific research, they did experience benefits from actually using the app, and their stress levels went down, their ability to signal their own stress levels went up, their capabilities, but they only needed a week to do it because they, like me and like Yvette, we don't necessarily have problems or difficulties with signaling our own stress. We think. But we only need like 1 or 2 times of filling it in a week, and then we're sort of like, okay, yeah, I know, I'll walk a bit slower, take a hike. You know?
And then the results of the study, we have elaborated on the study that it was a single phase experimental design, and after 2 months, people still experience immense stress levels, better insight into the stress levels, resilience, much more resilience, subjective, better quality of life. So really strong results still after 2 months of using the app. So that gives us some insight that the changes we make, and maybe
yes, there's a learning benefit.
Yeah.
But you also become more in tune with your physical body and your mental, because when you have all of these different emotions, it's very hard to put them together to say what they mean.
Yeah.
And I think any other questions? Elaine, then.
This is compared to some of the apps that we already have in the App Store, for example. Because we have many of them.
Yes.
They have our big GGz and they will your online like ads. So,
well, there are a lot of stress apps available, but none of them are really scientifically reviewed by people. We have evidence. Yeah, then validated. So our app is validated, and that's the big and we looking at this chronic pattern and active stress. So that's also does that answer your question?
So thanks for the great talk. So we talked a lot about the workload related stress. So I was wondering whether there's also some insight in other kinds of stresses. For example, if I'm talking about young people, also PhDs actually, and the fear of growing up or deciding what to do afterwards is actually a big factor of stress. So if you have an app that is reminding you of that stress every couple of hours, you think it's beneficial? I'm sure it's beneficial for the specialists, right? Because you get an insight in the stress levels throughout the day, throughout the month, everything. But like for the patient itself, you think it helps? Maybe it helps calming you down when you relax, you maybe also relax throughout the future.
Data. It's not our data.
Yeah.
They use it without us.
Okay.
We don't have insight in yet.
Okay.
So it's a standalone app. They use it and they can share.
This data is not stored anywhere.
it's stored on our server, so technically, yes, if you asked me to view it on your specific account, I could with your permission, and then I have to go.
I mean, I'd be happy to share this data with my psychiatrist or psychotherapist in the
You
end,
could.
because I think it's
Yeah,
valuable
you need to
data.
show the app like this because we don't have synchronized with
Yeah.
our sort of patient dossier or something like
The
that.
app can show you summary.
Yeah, the inside page you can make screenshots and show it. And with the question you say about the app reminding you, there are some people who a little techno stress and stress about. For that people, it's not a good device to use, I think, because there are people who don't like to be reminded in that manner. So,
What I do think is that we also made the step at work for our own employees who are already in a working field, already doing their jobs. And they had the exact same question, like, what am I going to do about, like, I'm just going to be reminded of the fact that I'm stressed all the time, which is true. And I know this. Well, first of all, they didn't really know that it differed in levels. So there were certain times of the day when they weren't as stressed as other times of the day. And it depended on what they were doing. And then they were able to make changes in the way they did things, when they did things, if they did it all at once, or what kind of things they could do in between to keep their stress levels down. And that's also an important thing of what the app does. It gives you summaries about what things you do and when you do them and how they pan
I
out for
agree
you.
with you. 80% of stress levels at work are because of private situations. So this is also something the app captures, because you can ask the app 2 times, 3 times, 4 times a day. And it really needs to be 3 to 4 times a day, because then you can also see private situation and stressful experience in your private situation.
Work-related stress.
Yes, no, but and all the way around, especially private life, like big decisions, being away from family, all these things in your mission also. And then you can see, hey, it's not about work or study, it's more about my private life and what can I do about these things. So maybe that's an answer.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Please join me in